Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar on organizational change management for project controls. I'm Nate Habermeyer, your moderator today. I'm Director of Marketing for Dokanish and Company. Dokanish and Company is a world leader in project controls and system implementation for a number of capital projects across a variety of industries around the world. Today, I'm welcoming Omar Kaoud, our expert on organizational change, for a discussion around vision and relationships, the twin pillars of successful change for capital projects. Omar, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure being here, Nate, and I also have the added honor of being in the Toronto office, so I'm really excited to
Woohoo!
be here. Yeah.
That's right.
And also to talk about visioning and stakeholder relationships and how they can contribute to successful outcomes on capital projects.
Yeah, and I want to say, first of all, before we dive in, any similarity to, because this is a very pragmatic discussion, we're going to be walking through some frameworks that you can use, very practical. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. And so, just quickly, I've blocked the your cameras are turned off, the mics are turned off. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. I also got a few messages asking about a recording. Yes, the answer is this is live to tape, and so we will be posting the video after the webinar to our YouTube channel, and we will be sharing that out via email and then our LinkedIn, so you can check us out. Also on our website, of course. So before I dive in, let me share some context for you about this discussion. In our experience working with capital projects across a range of industries, we've observed that technical excellence alone doesn't guarantee successful change. It's something that organizations struggling with change often focus exclusively on, the systems and technology, while overlooking some of the critical foundations for a successful change initiative, that being a clear and compelling vision and a strong stakeholder relationship strategy. And Omar is going to walk us through two practical frameworks that we hope you can go and start to execute right away in your job and in your ecosystem. So, Omar, before we explore these frameworks, we've mentioned vision and stakeholder relationships. Can you just explain what those mean and give everyone sort of a foundation for this?
Yeah, I think it's always important to kind of operationalize and define the words that we use. So for vision is a tangible representation of what your long-term goal is. It's effectively describing an idealized future state. So we want to, it really centers around what's that perfect end state that you're shooting for. When we talk about stakeholder relationship, it describes the quality and the range of a person's social network. And social network here is within the confines of their organization, not like, like LinkedIn type of social network, talking specifically within the organization that people operate in. So we're talking about like how close are your relationships with your peers? How broad is it? Are you able to reach out to different departments in your organization, like
Yep.
HR or finance, and have like they know who you are, they respect you, they that kind of stuff. So those are the two concepts that we'll be utilizing today as we go through this webinar.
Yeah, thanks for those definitions. Let me flip it around. Since we're talking about vision and stakeholder relationships, how do those lead, how can sort of missing the opportunity in those two items lead to failed change on capital projects that we help overcome?
Yeah, so the example that I'd like to share in this webinar is from the perspective of a PMO. I think that they are a really good case study in this regard because, first of all, their responsibility is primarily around implementing standards and governance when it comes to project management across that organization's portfolio of projects. And the other element that makes them really good for this example is that they don't generally have any direct reporting authority over the projects in their portfolio.
Mm,
And so what that means is that they really need to rely on creating a compelling vision and leveraging their stakeholder relationships in order to be able to successfully implement change. So, an example of where a PMO can often find failure in implementing change is coming out with, let's say they want to implement a new standardized WBS, they want to improve the standards of creating schedules, and they want to kind of roll out all these sort of improvement initiatives. Um, Often the way it can be delivered is very prescriptive and very like this is best practices. Um, and uh, the way that it engages with people, with their stakeholders, can often come across as cold.
mm,
And so often we find that um, they have the best of intentions and really good, let's say, processes that they want to implement, but they fall a little bit short because they haven't created that compelling message as to why I should care and what are the
right,
benefits from it.
right, right. Yeah, and this is good. Thank you for those terms and sort of defining kind of both sides of the coin, if you will. Could you let's move on to the frameworks. Let's talk about our first framework, how what it is, what do you hope it achieves and creates for the audience, and then how it operates, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to you, Omar.
Yeah, so like we said, we've got the two pillars here. We'll start with the visioning. So the visioning is when we engage with our clients, generally happen within the constraints of a workshop. So it's ourselves working very closely with it could be a single project leader. And again, I'll use the PMO throughout this webinar as our example. So it could be the head of a PMO that we sit down with and we go through a battery of questions. And the intent of these questions is to kind of draw out, refine, and kind of bring to life their vision of what they want to see their PMO and their organization at the end of their journey.
Mm,
Uh, and the questions themselves are not earth-shatteringly like profound. Um, the real value is in the actual conversation itself and investing the time into thinking and talking about what it is you want to see at the end of this journey. So that becomes a really essential part of the visioning exercise is just going through that, asking the questions, what do you want to see at the end of your journey? What are the outcomes? What are the benefits you're looking to reap from that? And then once we've kind of formulated a strong vision, we then lean into the stakeholder relationship side of things by uh, developing what's called a value proposition, and we'll get into a little bit more detail a little bit later on. But essentially, what it is you're taking that vision and now you're going out to your network to evangelize and to spread the word about what it is that you want to get folks to buy into, to support. And again, we'll go through a few sort of strategies and techniques to be able to leverage your network to build that coalition of support.
the process is fairly involved, as you alluded to, right? Like we're sitting down, we work with our clients, we it's workshops, the conversation, we facilitate the conversation. And I think a key takeaway right now is that a lot of what you're talking about is not technology or system relation related. It's all people, right? And
Mhm.
the people are what come first, right? So let's talk about the visioning, the vision sort of component, and what are the key ingredients that someone must consider, should consider when they're trying to fashion together a compelling vision?
Yeah, so I'd like the folks to be able to take away, three things that they can implement tomorrow or today. Um, uh, in creating that vision. There's obviously we're giving sort of like the Coles Notes version of it. Of course, the full experience, entails, like I said, a workshop. But these are three things that folks can kind of take home with them right now. So the first one is clarity. Okay. And essentially, what we talk about when we say clarity is you want to be able to very clearly and very specifically articulate what it is that you want that idealized future state to look like. In a capital projects environment, this entails, let's say, detailing out what are the process impacts, what are the rules, how are they going to change, what will the outcomes look like at the end of that journey. So that's the first one is clarity and specificity.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is long-term value and impact. So what we're striving for here is being able to demonstrate how the transformation is going to lead to a better world. So we're talking how we're going to demonstrate that we're getting improved efficiencies, cost savings, better project outcomes, and other tangible benefits to the organization as a whole, because projects are undertaken in order to support an organizational strategy. It's important that we make that connection always to this granular sort of change initiative, and tie it back to the greater organization and how it supports it. The last one is stakeholder resonance. So I saved this one for last because it is a good transition into the next area we're going to look into. But this really just talks about um, your vision should resonate and align with the interests of your key stakeholders, and it has to address a very important question, which is what's in it for me. So the folks that you're going to be standing in front of and compelling them to adopt your change, you need to answer what's in it for them, and that's a really important part of the visioning exercise.
Yeah, the resonance is an interesting one that you mentioned, and I've always, I like that. As a marketer, we talk about WIFM, and we talk about, making sure that messaging, resonates with a particular audience. And so the resonance one is a really interesting point for me. What do you do? So, given a change initiative, there are a variety of stakeholders, right? There's the sponsors, there's the C-suite, there are your like business unit heads. It could be like on it, so on and so forth. So, what do you do if you cannot achieve alignment across, key stakeholders? Like, what if some just don't get in line?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it's my biggest advice to folks is to listen and understand what people are actually saying. Um, it's uh, it's very much an art of kind of discerning genuine objections from just a general aversion to change, because there is a natural human inclination to not want to change. Um, and there is a fair bit of complexity around the question you're asking, and so much so I think it warrants its own webinar.
Okay, duly noted. So when we come back in September, we'll have a webinar on just resistance, and uh, which is interesting because we did publish a white paper on resistance management for change initiatives in capital projects. So I'd be happy to share that link on our website, on our LinkedIn, and it's available for download. So we'll put it into the show notes. So, okay, that's like a little bit of information that answered the question. Can you kind of expand on it? Give me the Coles Notes version so we don't take too long on this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to distract too much from it. I do actually really like talking about this topic.
Yep.
Um, Sorry about that. I've been very still and the lights just went out, so I'll be more animated to keep the lights on. So very broadly, resistance can be bucketed into like two main categories, and this is sort of the paradigm that I use with clients. Um, the first bucket is logical,
Hmm.
and logical resistance is things that are like resistance on a technical, logistical level, issues that kind of stem from the practicality of the change that you're trying to promote. So, as an example, let's say there was an organization that was looking to monitor and track and document its workforce's minute by minute interactions. So, like, we
Yep.
want to know what are you doing at each minute of the hour. That's a like you'll obviously get a lot of pushback from it because logistically that's a very difficult, if not impossible, thing for people to do. So that's what I consider a logical form of resistance. And the emotional one is resistant that is kind of stemming from like an ingrained cultural norm, maybe political ambitions. There's, some people that have ambitions to move up the corporate ladder, and maybe the change that you're uh, promoting kind of conflicts with that. Or it can just be a general apprehension about the future of the change. So, I mean, again, it's a very natural human instinct to be apprehensive about uncertainty in the future. So I like to segregate these two into these two buckets. And the reason why I do this is these two have very different solutions to them. So if if I'm sensing that there is a logical resistance to something because of the practicality of it, then that's a discussion about the technical details of the change that we're looking to implement. So that's
Mm.
like a business analyst type of thing. It's a technical thing that we need to kind of address. The other type, the emotional type, is where I guess people like myself make our money, which is a lot on the psychological dimension of things. And again, I think it's probably best staged for its own webinar. The last thing that I will say is that the this is further complicated because often you'll get um, emotional resistance masquerading as technical, and so being able to separate the two and be able to manage those two becomes a bit of a science and an art thing.
Just look down in the notes and you'll find a link to download our white paper on resistance. So let's getting back to the three ingredients that you mentioned before around vision. What do leadership visions tend to look like when we start with clients?
So from our experience, a lot of times they just don't exist.
Hmm.
I think uh, what we've noticed often is that uh, people have a mandate, or organizations have a mandate there, like, yes, we need to roll out a change. So again, going back to our PMO example, we need to roll out these standardized procedures for, let's say, risk management. Okay. Um, and without necessarily thinking about, okay, what does the future look like? What is it that I want to see our organization look like at the end of this journey? So that's one. A lot of them just simply don't have that. They just kind of make it kind of about just the business.
Okay.
Um, Other times they're kind of dull or they're like overly clinical and cold. So uh, again, an example might be if we use our WBS example, it might be something like, our organization wants to implement a standardized WBS because that's the best practice. It's not particularly motivating. It's kind of vague, doesn't really express all that much. So that's, one of the facets of it. The other one is that they're usually not particularly compelling from a human perspective.
Hmm.
They don't kind of touch the soul, as you will, and kind of galvanize people and motivate them to want to like chase this future state that we're looking for.
Yeah. Why do you think the visions are non-existent or dull or vague? Like why do people do that?
Uh, I think. I think especially in the capital project sort of space, um, I think the idea or the concept of like you're working with people and like people are humans and you need to kind of cater to the human side of things, I think is I don't think it's part of the calculus because of the nature of the work that they do. So capital projects are, creating buildings, creating infrastructure. It's like very hands-on in it. And so like the human element of it doesn't really enter the equation. It's about like, well, what's our progress on pouring the foundation? How close are we to, getting all the wiring done? So like those are the sort of considerations. And when you're trying to roll out a change, like you need to think about these things because at the end of the day, you're trying to get people to adopt this and not a machine to adopt it, which is obviously easier. So I think it's just a consideration that people don't take into account, but I think it's starting to gain more prominence in the capital projects realm.
Hmm. So give me an example, give us an example of a vision that incorporates like everything that you mentioned in the three pillars.
Yeah. So, so if we take sort of the WBS uh, work breakdown structure example from the perspective of a PMO, so a good vision would be something like our vision is to implement a flexible, standardized WBS across all our projects by the end of 2026. Uh, this new work breakdown structure is going to boost our planning efficiency by 30% by cutting 2 weeks off our project start times, increase cross-team collaboration, improve resource allocation, and reduce cost overruns, and enable faster executive decision making through standardized real-time reporting. This transformation is going to make the PMO a true strategic partner for our project teams and the organization as a whole, and will give us a common language for us to be adaptable to all types of project types and to deliver better, faster, more cost-effective results.
Yeah, I'm excited. But it honestly, there, no matter who you are as a stakeholder, like where you are in the organization, you kind of see yourself in that description. So if you're an executive, there's time savings, there's, like cost cutting, there's kind of like top line and bottom line impact. And then if you're on the PMO team, there's, engagement, there's, purpose, vision for like your role and your team's role in the organization. So yeah, I can see why that would have increased value. So now let's take that and pivot to discuss our relationship framework.
Yeah, so the relationship framework is, again, I want to give folks three takeaways from it. The first one is about developing and rehearsing your value proposition. The second one is leveraging your existing network and expanding it if necessary. And then building a coalition of supporters. So I'll go through just each one very briefly to describe it. So the connection between your vision and your value proposition is that you're taking your vision and now what you're doing is you're crafting what you're going to say to your various stakeholders. So that value proposition has to really answer the what's in it for them. It has to be very clear what it is that you're looking to do. And it has to resonate with people. So this part is really about like rehearsing and refining what you're saying. It could be like you write it down and like you practice in a mirror, or it can be you just like sort of silently practicing. But it becomes a really important thing. It's like your pitch. How you're going. What is the wording that the world is going to hear you say about your initiative? Um, Leveraging your network is about utilizing first and foremost those people that are friendly to you, that you have a good personal and professional relationship with, to start pitching your value proposition. The importance there is that they're a friendly target, so you trust them and they'll give you good feedback to further refine your value proposition. And the other advantage of going through this route is that this starts to enable you to build that coalition of supporters. And that becomes helpful when you start reaching out to folks that may not be supportive. So approaching them with a large army of people that are behind you kind of puts a bit of pressure on people to kind of get on the bus and
Yep.
support your initiative.
Yep. Yeah, I think the framework offers these practical steps. And again, what we're discussing here is what we hope you can go and execute tomorrow or Monday or, in the coming weeks at your work. So we're really trying to be pragmatic with the discussion. And then it's also just a glimpse into our process when it comes to organizational change management. So let's explore the stakeholder relationships a little bit further. I'm going to ask you some questions so that we can kind of dive in. And your first step mentions a value proposition. Like, how might this differ when addressing sort of technical specialists versus executive sponsors? Am I using the same language, or am I switching it up?
Yeah, you're definitely switching it up. The most I think the guiding principle here is put yourself in their shoes. What is it that what they would care about? What are the things that are important to them? So from a technical specialist perspective, again, if we're sort of using the work breakdown structure example, the messaging or the value proposition to them would sound something like, this new standardized WBS is going to help remove any additional thought or planning that needs to be done where you're required to think of how you're going to decompose your project on your own and whether or not you've got the right buckets to capture all your scope. This new standardized WBS is going to do that all for you, so it's going to save you time and effort, and so that's for a technical specialist. For somebody that's, let's say, an executive sponsor, the messaging is more around, well, this standardized WBS is going to provide you with very transparent and clear data to help enable you to make very strategic decisions about the portfolio of projects that you're managing. So they're very different sort of messaging. And again, it needs to kind of appeal and relate to what they care about, what is their world encompass. So that's how I would kind of approach those two different stakeholders.
When you talk about value proposition, and before we talked about resistance, like let's just say you go out and you're evangelizing this value proposition for the capital project. Like, when you're going to get feedback, you're going to get negative feedback, you're going to get positive, like there's going to be lots of feedback. What are you doing with that? Like, what's a sort of a process for that?
So I'm of the opinion that all types of feedback are good. I always, even when working with a difficult client that's expressing a lot of negativity, I still look at it as positive because they're still engaging with you. They're still talking with you. The worst outcome is when you get radio silence because that they've disconnected. So in terms of like when you receive negative feedback, a lot of it is then analyzing it. Is kind of what I mentioned earlier about the logical versus the emotional. So there's a lot of that goes on. Is I'm thinking about the kind of feedback that I'm getting. Are people raising genuine, like, technical issues that are going to make or render the future state inoperable or difficult to implement? If so, then that's my cue to engage the technical folks on my project team. It could be the business analyst, it could be our project control specialist. That's like, maybe we're configuring a system, a new cost system to deploy into our client's environment. So that's my cue to go to them and say, hey, look, I've been going around to different stakeholders, and they're all telling me that if we configure the system to report at the lowest level of the WBS, the cost, it's going to really make things difficult and challenging for them. And then we have a conversation. Maybe they come back and tell me like, no, trust me, we've done this before. I know what their issue is. And so they're advising me, which then helps me revise my value proposition with information that they're providing with me. On the positive things, when people are positively offering you feedback on your value proposition, that's just that's money. Like
it's just nice.
Yeah, it's just
it's
nice.
To feel good.
Yeah, you let it go to your head. But you
don't let it go to your head.
Well, I mean, as encouragement is what I mean.
Right.
not to become conceited.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. But I also use that as ammunition when I want to go to other folks and extol the benefits of my value proposition. I'm saying, well, so and so in, let's say, procurement said that this new standardized WBS is going to, solve a lot of their issues because there's more transparency and it's easier for them to understand, costs and whatnot. So there is value in incorporating the positivity that you've heard as well.
Yeah, those points are like solving people's problems. And when you get the positive feedback, I mean, that's points to double down on. So it is useful. You talk about starting with friendly advocates, and your team of organizational change management specialists, like we've worked with clients in the past, helped them identify individuals in the organizations that are friendly advocates. Like how do you go about doing that? How do you identify these friendly advocates?
Yeah, so I think for the most part, the friendly advocates are probably going to be pretty evident and explicit, because you're the one that maintains the relationships with your network. So you'll have an idea of like, okay, this person is a project director. I know who they are personally. I know the sort of things that they struggle with. So you kind of judge it based on that, because you've had that relationship. Other times for folks that you don't necessarily know who they are, maybe you haven't had as much exposure to them, maybe you haven't had the opportunity to forge a stronger bond with them. A lot of them is just going in, putting your value proposition in there, and then seeing like what kind of response that you get. Not to be overly assertive or dominant and insistent that this is the end all be all, because your first and foremost priority should be like formulating or forming a strong social bond with this person, and then figuring out your opportunity to kind of inject opportunities to talk about the tougher policies within your value proposition. So in some, you probably have a fairly good sense of who your good and friendly advocates are, just by virtue of you engaging with them on a day-to-day basis and knowing them from a personal perspective.
Yeah, it's how you approach those friendly advocates, and the process in which you processing their feedback is a lot of times sort of where it gets a bit blurry, and that we help clarify. So I do appreciate that. Omar, can you let's apply these two frameworks to some of our work, like a case study. And of course, I'm just going to warn everybody that, due to confidentiality, around our clients, we can't give away names or identify. So it's going to be, specific as we can get. But can you apply these to a case study?
Yeah. So one of our clients that manages a very large portfolio of projects was embarking on an effort to kind of standardize a lot of project management, project controls, processes across a particular department within their organization. And the approach that they came to doing such a endeavor was more of a sort of mandate. Like, this is, we're approaching these people, like the vision, I should say, that they were kind of approaching people with is, hey, you need to just get on board.
Change or else.
Yeah, change, or, and so, that was sort of the card that was being played with that particular department. And there was, I would say, some fairly substantial pushback. So,
That's right.
And that looked like some people, just obviously, explicitly saying like, hey, this, improvement that you want to do in, let's say, the scheduling practices, standardizing the sort of resources that we pull. I apologize, folks. This is webinar bloopers for some reason. This is
go on. The bloopers reel.
Yeah,
we'll have one after that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah. Pushing back on like the logic of, how we're restructuring some of their projects into a standardized WBS. And again, this is kind of what I alluded to earlier. They're kind of expressing logical sort of resistance, but it's being, at the core of it is, there's an emotional resistance to it as well. There's a fear of like, well, we've operated this way for such a long time, creating our own, work breakdown structure. What does that look like now that it's going to be standardized? Like, what about all the things that I used to do that I can no longer do because now there's more transparency around this? So the way we applied this sort of methodology was, we engaged the senior leader that was kind of the sponsor of this, and we simply had the conversation about, look, what is it that you're looking to implement? What is that final sort of idealized end state looks like? And a lot of it is asking questions like, okay, does it look like people utilizing this standard WBS exactly the way we're rolling it out? Does it look like them adhering to these governance as strictly as possible? So it's a lot of questioning, and the output of it is a lot of information that we take and we synthesized it and then put it into sort of like a digestible format. And that became sort of the talking points that this sponsor would then use to then start reaching out to the senior directors of this department to start kind of evangelizing and extolling all the benefits of this standardized WBS, this renewed adherence to better scheduling practices, and that made a big difference. Folks now were not, the entry point for a lot of folks wasn't like this, adherence, this iron-willed sort of adherence to a new process or a new governance. It was more about coming to them with a good proposition. This is why it's going to help you type of an approach.
Yeah. That's helpful, and good job on kind of anonymizing the case study. So we have some time for audience questions, and I'm just going to look at the Q&A here. And then, so the first one is, what common mistakes do you see project leaders make when trying to build coalitions? Yeah,
I'm just giving it some thought. So I think one of the things that I think is very tempting and tantalizing for a lot of project leaders is to rush to the press and rush to anybody that will hear your value proposition. I think the risk in doing that is that you're not going to build the momentum you need in order to get enough people on board. because you're going to get a mixed bag of people that are naysayers and people that are supporters and people that are like indifferent. And so it makes it a lot more complex and challenging because you haven't really gone through this systematically. Because what you're going to get is a mosaic of people that are with you, not with you, indifferent. And now you've got to go through the process of like trying to work through, okay, well, how am I going to leverage, my supporters in order to bring the people that are on the fence? How am I going to reach out to the people that are not supportive of this and get them on board? So it kind of makes things a little bit more complicated, and it also it may also cause a little bit of spin because your value proposition, the messaging that you're engaging these people with, is evolving, and so people may then start to get conflicting messages because they're talking to their peers as well. So one peer might be like, oh yeah, well, I heard that this work breakdown structure is going to make things super transparent, and someone else might be like, well, I heard the exact opposite. I heard it'll be easier for us to plan our. So it becomes a little bit more complicated on folks, where a more structured and targeted approach is more ideal.
The other next one is how did you convert the skeptics into supporters from the case study? I'm assuming from the case study. Yep.
Yeah. So I think one powerful tool is when you want to convert someone that's skeptical, and particularly in this example, is being able to demonstrate what you're talking about. So being able to show somebody like, look, let me show you what I mean. Give me an opportunity with a group of people, and I'll show you what it means. I'll show you what it looks like. And that was a big ingredient to the success, which was we approached a group, and with a really thought out sort of value proposition. And we got some great engagement. We got, and when I say engagement, I mean we got everything. We got people that were saying positive things, and we also got people that were saying negative things. And but at the end of the day, what made it successful and what turned this person away from being a skeptic is seeing the process, seeing how, okay, I saw what the value proposition looked like, I saw how you used it, and I saw what the outcome was, and it was great. Like, what a difference. And I think it's like a lot of it is just being able to demonstrate your capabilities and competencies, so that your leaders get confidence in having to do it on their own.
Great. So we're right at time, and I want to, just be respectful of everyone's, participation. So, yeah, thanks, Omar, for walking us through that. As we wrap up today's discussion, I'd just like to re-emphasize the two frameworks that we talked about that are pragmatic, that we hope you can use right away in your job or in your next change initiative around vision, which is clarity, value, and resonance, and then around building stakeholder relationships, which is develop and practice that value proposition, begin with friendly advocates, and then go and engage possible skeptics or like folks that are new, and sort of following that path to really hone your value proposition and make it work for you. And like we said before, we've only scratched the surface of some of these with these frameworks. For those that are interested in a deeper discussion about applying our approaches to any kind of change initiative that you might have for your capital project, happy to conduct a one-on-one consultation and sort of dig a little bit deeper. There's Omar and the rest of his team that can have that conversation. So feel free to reach out, and we'll include the contact information in the show notes below. And so I'd like to thank everybody for your participation today. Thank you, Omar, for the two frameworks and sort of walking us through that. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Nate. So take care, everybody.
Take care. Thanks.